So when Governor Sam Brownback of Kansas started his first term a while ago, he promised that he would get the economy of Kansas back on track. He ended up signing a massive tax cut package to try to do just that. It cost $1.1 billion. And these guys were convinced that this is what we need. This is the cure-all right here. This is the medicine. It'll take care of the problem. Now, of course, the tax cuts were specifically for business, and they were for the income rate for the rich. So that's where the bulk of the cuts went. And, I mean, that's textbook trickle-down economics. That's Reaganomics 101. So how did it work out? Quote, census data revealed that the poverty rate in Kansas has risen each year since the governor was elected. Oops. Now, again, I want to be clear about this because some people might just ignore that or brush over it. You can't brush over it because the argument from the supply-siders, the trickle-down people, they say, no, if you cut taxes for the rich, the wealth trickles down onto everybody. That includes the middle class. That includes the poor. So you're not going to see an increase in poverty if you do trickle-down economics. The way it works is everybody's wealthier. They always say this, a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, empirically speaking, that didn't happen. So on that point, you would be wrong. Well, another point that these guys make is, well, look, when you cut taxes for the rich, what happens is you unleash the beast, they say. The private sector roars and you see job creation all over the place. And because you cut taxes, it's actually the case that there's going to be a net revenue increase to the government. So they cut taxes, quite literally cut revenue, and then they say, no, you don't get it. There's going to be an increase in revenue because when you cut taxes, the private sector takes off, so then naturally, even though it's a lower rate, you'll get more money as a raw number. Well, is that true? Let's find out. Quote, there's a nearly $900 million budget hole his tax cuts created for the state. Okay, fail again. So, again, let's stop and think about this. The argument from the trickle-down people, if you cut taxes for the rich and deregulate, then the wealth will be spread around and everybody will be happier and the poverty rate will go down and the middle class will make more money, yada, yada, yada. Not true. And not true that it fixed the deficit. In fact, it made it much, much worse. Well, let's see what other information we have. Quote, rather than retreat from the massive tax cuts that are crippling his state's finances, Governor Sam Brownback wants to cut classroom funding for Kansas schools by $127 million. So he destroys the budget with these tax cuts, and then he says instead of going back and fixing it now in his second term, and he barely won to get back in office, he says, no, I know what we'll do. We'll just cut spending where we need it, like education. Now, also, understand, when I say where they need it, that's not just my opinion. In fact, you know whose opinion that is? Courts in Kansas who have ruled that how underfunded the schools already are is unconstitutional. They've forced the administration to spend more on schools because they're spending so little already that the schools are doing poorly and they're massively underfunded and people are not getting a good education as a result of it. So they're already underfunded, and he goes, no, I'm going to cut it by more money. And also they're doing this trick where they mask it as if they're trying to portray it as if they're not doing cuts. Because what they're saying is, oh, we're going to change the way that we fund the schools to a block grant. And so they tell you the number up front, what the block grant is, and it sounds bigger, but what they don't tell you is they give you that money and then they don't give you any more money for an extended period of time. So they are the sleaziest. They are as bad as it gets for how they treat their people and how bad their policies are. But I have more information. Quote, more broadly, Kansas state workers' pension funds are also being used to patch Brownback's fiscal gap. He is proposing to cut state payments to pension funds by $446 million over 3 fiscal years. All right, I need you to understand that when we talk about Kansas, these numbers are huge. Because Kansas, it doesn't have that big of a population. It's a red state. When you talk about, millions of dollars in Kansas, it's a huge thing. We're not talking about the federal government here where we throw around the word billion like it's nothing. We're talking about Kansas. $446 million cut in pension funds. Unbelievable. So he's quite literally doing a reverse Robin Hood. He's taking from the poor and the middle class, and he's giving to the rich with tax cuts. And then finally, quote, another big-ticket Brownback cut strips roughly $300 million in transportation department funding over the next couple of years. So this guy is just slashing absolutely everywhere that benefits the middle class and the poor and regular people in Kansas. And the only people benefiting are the rich. Here you have it. Right-wing economics, trickle-down economics, and its results.